Welcome to the millionth take of this video. Oh my god, I filmed this video so many times. I just wanted to say all the things I wanted to say. This is probably going to get really overexposed and weird, but I decided to film this on my webcam because my camera died from trying to film this video so many times I didn't want to wait, so we're just doing it here. Also, this is more comfortable for me to sit. This is going to be a long video, probably, so buckle in, enjoy the ride. This is a indirect response to the hashtag fake reader girls conversation that's been happening on YouTube and blogs, and it's a really cool, very important conversation. People have been, I think a few people have been brushing it under the rug or dismissing it as booktube drama, but it isn't. I mean, I don't think that any conversation that, since I've been on booktube since like 2012, has ever been drama. I think every conversation has been valid, because when someone feels something, and someone has concerns about the community that they're a part of, I think it's really bad, and it sets a poor precedent to say that it's drama and it's someone stirring up drama. I think that can happen, but I haven't seen that happen very often. I've seen it generally people having concerns, and they want to voice those concerns. But in this case especially, it is not drama. It is a real, valid conversation, and I will link to a bunch of blog posts and YouTube videos about it. If you want to watch those, there are people who have said what I would want to say about certain aspects of this conversation better than I could say them. So yeah, if you want to get involved or talk about it or watch, I'm sure if you're watching this, you've seen some stuff. But I want to address this idea of being a real reader, and I want to talk about my struggles personally with conforming to this idea of being a real reader. Because, spoiler alert, I did not start reading. I mean like reading. I don't mean like I was reading 50 books, or I was reading lots and lots of books. I mean like picking up a book and reading until I was 15. And I want to talk about that, because this idea of being a real reader played a huge factor in the fact that I didn't start reading until I was about 15 or 16 years old. So, and I'm not saying that because I started reading at 15 or 16 means that I'm any less of a reader, because I think if you start reading at any time in your life, you are a reader, and it doesn't matter when you start. There's not a wrong time to start reading, and there's not a wrong way to read, and that's something I know now, of course, and that's something I've known for a long time, intellectually, but there is not a right genre, there is not a right time period, there's not a right format. You can be reading an audiobook, you can be reading a print book, you can be reading a Kindle book. All of those are valid forms of reading, and that they all make you readers, because there's no such thing as a real reader. Obviously, we know that. But some background, and this isn't supposed to be a sob story at all, and I want to say that I'm very privileged and very lucky, and I've had it easier than a lot of people. But when I was growing up, from the ages of 5 to 8 years old, I had a lot of problems with reading. Reading comprehension was an issue with me. I also had problems in math, and I had IEPs in math, and I had an IEP in reading. An IEP is just means that it's like an individual something. I don't actually remember what it stands for. I'm sure people who are teachers or maybe would know. But it means that you have some issues with reading or issues with a subject, and you get special help, or you get special outside class time or whatever. And so I did go to a special class. Not a special class. I just went to an outside class where I would be taken out, and I would have a tutoring in certain subjects. And for between the ages of 5 and 8, it was reading, and it was math. And the math never went away. I've always had problems with math, but the reading I ended up being able to catch up in or get a little bit more skilled at through that tutoring. But the fact that I had to go to a class, the fact that I was taken out of my class, the fact, and this could speak larger to like education or views on education, and the fact that I had a lot of trouble with reading made me feel, and I'm going to use this word because that's how I felt, stupid. It made me feel very outside. I was a pretty bright kid, in all accounts from my teachers and parents, but I didn't feel that way. I did not feel bright. I saw all of these kids around me who just could read anything in my mind. In my mind, they could pick up anything and they could read it. And there was me who really struggled with it. And it was something that was intimidating. It was very intimidating. Reading intimidated me and scared me. And when kids, I think, are scared or feel overwhelmed or feel, you know, stupid, or insecure about a subject or about their intellect or about how smart they are, they can push away in a very big way, and I did that. So although I ended up catching up in reading, I pushed it away because I felt like I wasn't as good and I wasn't going to do it right and I wasn't as smart as everyone else, and I was very insecure about it. And it was just a fact. It was just a fact of my life at that age. And it was something I didn't really talk about, but it was something that was always on my mind, very, like, implicitly on my mind. There were certain, you know, external factors that came to play. It was nothing to do with my family. My family all really loved to read, and I think it frustrated them, especially my sister, that I didn't want to read because I pushed it away because of those insecurities. I was very stubborn about it, and I think it made her really sad because she loved reading and she was a voracious reader. But there were times, though, when there were external factors, specifically other kids, and specifically there was this group of girls who really loved reading and who were like voracious readers and still are today. And they're very nice, and I ended up becoming friends with them. Sorry about being overexposed. But there was one particular moment when I was probably in 3rd grade when I decided to give it a go. Because every once in a while I would try to read a book because I loved the Scholastic Book Fair and I loved picture books. And I think picture books are great, and I still think they're like the best thing ever. But in terms of chapter books, I want to say that, kind of make that distinction. But I would go to the Scholastic Book Fair and I would see all the chapter books and I'd be like, oh, this is exciting, and my mom wanted to encourage that, so she'd buy them for me, and then I would start them and then I wouldn't finish them because I would get frustrated because I felt like I was doing it wrong, or I was doing it poorly, I wasn't reading the right thing, and all these insecurities were coming into play. But one specific moment, though, I had picked up this Nancy Drew book. It was like Nancy Drew and the Chocolate Factory or something. And it was readathon week at my school, and my principal was camped out in the library doing this whole stunt or whatever. And we were walking into like art class, and I had my book, and there was a girl behind me who was reading Harry Potter at the time. I think she was reading the 5th or 6th Harry Potter book, and she seemed like so smart to me. I mean, she was reading a grown-up book, she was reading these big monstrous book, and she was very praised for how smart she was. And also at this time, this sort of comes to play. I just thought of this. There was the Gifted and Talented program, and I tried getting in like 3 times, and I didn't get in because of my reading and because of my math 3 times. And they like wanted me to join, and then they were like, oh, you didn't get in because your test scores. I remember that being like an insecurity thing as well. But she was in it, and she was part of this really cool, like in my mind, elite class of kids who were really smart and smarter than me, and I could never be as smart as them. I'm sorry if this video is like completely arduous. But we were like walking, and my principal saw me, and he wanted to encourage me, and he said, oh my god, good job, Emma, I'm so excited you're reading, and blah blah blah. And this girl was like, oh, she was like, Emma's not even a real reader. She's just like not a real reader. She you know, doesn't even like reading or whatever. And I didn't, but I don't think at the time, you know, I was very scared by reading. I don't know if I necessarily did like reading or didn't like reading. I think the chief feeling was I was scared of it. But that moment of this kid being like really judgmental, and I'm not saying, you know, she's this terrible kid at all, because I think kids are mean sometimes, but I felt awful, and it really validated my own insecurities and pushed me farther away from reading, because one of my peers was in my mind calling me out on how like stupid I was or whatever. And this stayed with me for a very long time, and I ran to other forms of story. I loved movies, I loved television, I loved other ways of getting stories without reading. And yeah, and it happened for a long time, and I frustrated a lot of people, and I was very stubborn about it, and occasionally I would pick up a book and try to read it, and then I'd put it down. I didn't want to do it. It wasn't until my sophomore year of high school when I became a library assistant on accident. Meaning I did not want to be in study hall, so they put me in the library to be a library assistant. And we had a really cool librarian and a room full of very cool young women who loved to read. I'm sorry this video is so long. And I was very out of my element and very intimidated, and some of those because at that point I was just like, I'm insecure about it, you know, all throughout middle school, but I'm just not even going to think about reading. I'm just going to do my own thing, which is fine. That's totally okay. And I'm not saying that if you don't read, there's something wrong. I'm just saying that in my case, I was very insecure about it. And so I wanted to fit in. So I started faking knowledge about reading. And I thought, you know what, might as well just try reading. And so the first book I remember finishing during that year was The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. I liked the adaptation, and I read the book, and I thought, whoa, this is a really fun book. I mean, it didn't, like, blow my mind, but I was like, I finished a book. And although the book is this small, it felt like an accomplishment. And I felt like, hey, you know, this isn't so bad. And then I read The Magicians by Lev Grossman. It was just in our library, and I picked it up, and I was like, whoa. I think that's part of the reason why this book means so much to me. But it really sparked something in me and allowed me, the experience of reading it and Lev Grossman's writing, allowed me to really shake those insecurities and allowed me to say, hey, I can do this. And part of it was that, part of it was having this really encouraging, wonderful librarian, and part of it was being around other people who were very unpretentious and had this love of reading, and part of it was just being in a library. I mean, the accessibility and the libraries give you is so amazing, and even though I could have just bought books at a bookstore, being in my high school library, being with a librarian, being with people who are so unpretentious lovers of books and reading, it infected me and did something to me and allowed me to not be as stubborn or not be as scared of it. I know this seems like really dramatic, but it was really, really profound in terms of my life because it ended up really changing my life. I became a voracious reader, and I became someone who loved words, and I loved stories, and I you know, read more, and I wasn't intimidated by classics, and I wasn't intimidated by anything. And it was the best time in my reading life because everything was at my disposal because I hadn't read anything yet. And those insecurities didn't really begin to play up about what it means to be a real reader until later on, because at that time, even before that, I didn't know what being a real reader was. I didn't really have a definition. I just knew that I was scared of doing it wrong. But it wasn't though until I got into college that those insecurities kind of came up again, because I was like, oh, well, reading romance, that means that you're not a real reader, or, you know, reading YA doesn't mean you're a real reader, or whatever. And I had these, like, thoughts in my mind, and they, like, I had more tools because of BookTube, because of becoming an English major, because of so many other things and other people in my life. I was able to be like, oh, well, that's silly. I mean, those ideas are silly. And they still sometimes come to play, but I had the right kind of tools to be like, hey, that doesn't mean anything. Reading romance means that you're a reader. Reading YA means that you're a reader. It doesn't make you any less of a reader. But I think it's really important to note, and sort of my point of this whole story is that by having this gatekeeping, and this probably could go into this deep conversation about patriarchy or about the society we live in, but having this idea in people's minds that reading is something that is scary and you have to check things off a list, or this just notion affects people. It's a huge effect on people. It had a huge effect on me, and it can make people feel very intimidated. Even just talking to people around my life who I've come in contact with, they still, you know, find reading very intimidating, and they see it as something they could never be a part of. Being a reader, they can never be a reader because they don't do the right things, and it's so sad. And I think we know that. It's very sad, and I think it makes these conversations that we've been having recently even scarier, because it does affect people. And I think, you know, someone could read that, you know, and maybe are insecure and go, wow, I can't read then. I can't be a real reader. I'm not a real reader. And that's really sad. And it also says something for me personally about libraries and the importance of libraries, and how much libraries, how great they are. They allow for accessibility. They allow for unpretentiousness. They allow for kids and adults to read in any format that they wish. And I don't know, I wanted to kind of talk about that and sort of be like my success story in a stupid way, but it's not really my success story. It's just more of my like, you know, the difficulties I've had with reading, and how this idea of being a real reader has hurt me in my own life, and maybe how it hurts other people. And this isn't supposed to be overly dramatic, even though this is a long video. But I don't know, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear any stories you have or anything. I think it would be great to hear that. But I hope you have a wonderful day. I will be back with snarky videos soon. But anyway, bye.